Hi everyone, greetings. It's Jonathan Nalder here, founder of the Future We community. And on this 50th anniversary of humans landing on the moon, going that far out into space and away from our home planet, it seems like the perfect time to come back to explaining where has our community come from. And I want to use this idea of there being three kind of parts to analyzing why we have a Future We community, why it's needed. And the first one is what. Okay, what's the problem that we're identifying? What are we looking at here? And I often use this analogy, I've used it in other videos and talks, of the overview effect, which is the research that's been done around people who've been to space. There are around about 500 people who've seen our planet, that little blue dot. Now, this analogy is a fantastic one because basically the overview effect, research has found that all of those astronauts have had this changed perspective on their planet when they come back. It's a really significant factor. And the challenge that I love to put out to people is, well, okay, sure, only 500 people have been to space so far, but imagine if you could see that view, you know, the Earthrise, the famous Earthrise photo of the Earth basically coming up over the horizon, viewed from the surface of the moon, and you see that little planet, and that's everybody, that's everything. And if you were looking down, if we could all have that perspective looking down, what would we see as being the problem? Like, what's the what? All of us would probably see different things, but Future We comes out of this idea that looking down on the planet, what we would see is this huge transition that's taking place. There's a whole lot of new technologies which we are constantly having to get our heads around as a society. And sure, you know, we've always done that as humans. There's always been successive waves of new technologies and inventions, but really what's happening now is that as we move into what's known as this fourth industrial era, which is where technology is now able to replace our mental capabilities, our cognitive capabilities en masse for the first time. And as that starts to happen, we're grappling with this whole range of issues. And it might just be something as simple as, is it okay to use beauty filters on ourselves when we're presenting stuff online? There's so many apps, etc. now, which almost will just automatically apply kind of a smoothing and a beautification kind of filters. And it's quite possible, given, you know, the human history, you know, development of makeup and what becomes okay, even in that kind of realm, is that at some point, and not just beautification filters, but all kinds of avatar type features will just become the norm. It's how we present ourselves. Maybe even this kind of favorite Star Wars hologram view, which I thought was appropriate for the 50th anniversary of the moon landings message as well. But it'll just become normal. And how do we feel about that? The fact that we might never online see what a real person looks like. Are you okay with that? Does that excite you, that you could have a fascinating, interesting avatar every time someone sees you? Or you think, nah, we're losing connection, we need to be able to see each other? That's just one example of a current technology, let alone machine learning. Like the whole fake news has been a really big thing for a while, and that's a bit of a byproduct of the fact that we all have these kind of internet connected devices. We can all publish whatever we want now, and there hasn't been a lot of filters to stop certain content. It hasn't been well structured or organized, particularly because a lot of the content hosting companies, social media, etc., they want as much content up there as possible. It's kind of their business model. But then it leads to this idea of, well, what happens when everyone can just publish stories and information? What does that mean for, you know, wider news, etc.? And, you know, even beyond that, we're getting into a phase now where artificial intelligence can produce faces, can redo videos and even audio files to make it look like people are saying and doing things which they never did. And it's getting to the stage where it's imperceptible being able to pick the difference. Now, these are just a few of the things which we're grappling with right now, but they're keeping on coming faster and faster. And, you know, we don't kind of have that time to develop a whole new set of skills to plan out proper responses, to plan ahead for these kind of changes anymore. We're kind of in this stage where it just happens. The technology is happening. That horizon, the event horizon for these new technologies is down to zero. It really is my belief. So Future We came out of looking down and thinking, what in Earth is happening? This is something which everyone is living through and transitioning through, and it might be as real effect as certain jobs and industries being completely changed because of some of these technologies. But there's all these wider things as well. So that's the what, very much my what, and the what of the Future We community. And then the next one in our little analysis structure of what is so what. So what does that matter? Why is that important? Why is that an issue? Let's do some research. Let's empathize with the people affected. What's going on there? Let's listen. Let's have respect for a whole bunch of different groups. Let's understand that we have a collective community. We need an open mind, but we also need to really start researching and getting our heads around, so what is the problem? And all of these are the things which connect in with our framework. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. All these different things I'm talking about, us employing to do this kind of research and understanding, comes out of our framework. And they're the reasons why they're in there, those, especially the first two parts, the exploring, understanding what's going on, having an open mind, and then the second part of relating, understanding, having empathy, getting together with a team is this very much the second domain. So yeah, this so what? Like, so why is this important? And if you look at things like the predictions for job losses from the impact of AI, etc., we're talking 40 to 70% was what I saw for a long time, but then I've seen 30 to 70, and even now 14% to 70%, which is such a huge range. That how can you plan for that? How can you write a curriculum that will prepare students for that wide a range of impacts? And of course you can't. You cannot predict that now. And it really comes to the heart of what I decided early on for myself when I came out of the traditional career path that I was on, sort of forced out of that. And also it's what many of the other people in our community have concluded as well, is that trying to do that planning is not going to work, but instead let's give students and workers, ourselves, our colleagues, the skills to invent our own solutions and to have the adaptability so that no matter what comes, we'll be okay. We'll be able to plan on the spot and deal with things much, much better, rather than just being overwhelmed as these different waves and issues, etc., come through. So there's a lot of reasons why this is really important, the so what, whether it's just people who are struggling to make a living. And I know here in Australia, actually the biggest percentage of people who are receiving government employment benefits is actually the sort of around about the age 55, which is quite amazing, because for a long time most people have assumed that the people who are receiving these benefits are probably young people, people who maybe have left school, they're just starting out and they need that kind of employment support. But no, it's actually the people who have been retrenched and who are struggling in this whole kind of new era. And so there's real impacts happening. And so that's the so what. That's why it's important. And then the third part of the sort of analysis structure, and you can do this on any problems yourself, is the now what. Okay, so now what am I going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And for me, that was founding the Future We community to bring together other experts and passionate people from all industries around this topic. And as well, out of this, so okay, if we want everyone to be adaptable, out of that came the mapping project, which is the Future We framework, or now we call it the Be Future Ready framework. And it exists to map out actually, okay, what does this look like? What are these skills that we need to be adaptable with? And it's grown exponentially. So we're up to well over 500 members globally now from about over 20 countries. And those members have contributed so far, we're close to 50, what we call our key concepts, the building block, foundational, best practice ideas in this area around what future skills will set us apart in a fully digital, automated era. And out of those 50, obviously, we decided that we need to be able to summarize those down. If we're going to be able to actually engage with people and explain this, we need it to be a bit simpler. And from there comes the 5 domains, the explore and the relate, the design, which is what we're talking about very much with our what, so what, and now what. Just designing, how do we start designing the solutions now? What are the thinking models? What are the planning models? This is a very basic one because you would know about design thinking or agile practices. There are a number of great ones that probably you already know and are already using. If you've learned a second language or if you read music, you have learned a whole different ways of thinking which you can then bring to bear. And that it might even include coding and computational thinking. All of those kind of things give you those great extra skills to start designing and seeing problems in a new light. And so that's very much the now what. It's the framework. It's putting the community together. We'll continue evolving the framework, but we also have our survey you can do now to find out where are you up to on your journey against that framework, and a whole bunch of other plans, of course, in the future as well. So that's our little overview, and I hope that you're commemorating the anniversary of humans being on the moon in that great kind of visionary achievement by also, like I'm encouraging you to do, turning it around and looking back down at the planet, looking back down at Earth to go, oh, okay, what's going on? So what is so special and important about that? And lastly, now what? What are you going to do about it? And take that structure, very simple but very powerful way of looking at problem solving, etc., and starting to design the solutions that you might see are necessary. Okay, thanks for listening.